In this corner, the philosopher king, the undefeated champion of the Hellenistic world, tutored by Aristotle himself and said to be descended from the gods, Alexander, the Great. And in the other corner, the self-made ruler of the steppe, the man who clawed his way up from slavery to forge the largest land empire in human history, Genghis Khan. Welcome everyone to the heavyweight championship of history. This is a battle for the title of the most influential conqueror the world has ever known. The bell's about to ring, so let's get to it.
All right, before the first round, let's look at the tail of the tape. And on paper, these two couldn't be more different. You've got Alexander, born into royalty, who lived this short, explosive life, dead at just 32. His rise to power, well, it was an inheritance he had to defend and then expand. Then you've got Genghis Khan, born into nothing on the harsh Mongolian steppe. He lived to be about 65. He didn't inherit an army, he built one from scratch by unifying warring tribes. One guy had the best education money could buy in the ancient world. The other was educated by pure survival. These starting points are going to set the stage for two completely different ways of thinking about conquest and empire.
So, here's tonight's fight card. We're going to go round by round to see how this all shakes out. We'll kick things off with their origins in Forged in Fire. Then we'll look at their imperial blueprints. Round 3 breaks down their art of conquest, and in the final championship round, we'll weigh their immortal legacy before we deliver the final verdict. Ding, ding. Round 1, Forged in Fire. They say a leader is a product of their environment, and for these two contenders, those environments were literally worlds apart. One was a carefully cultivated garden of philosophy and ambition. The other, a brutal, unforgiving wilderness where only the strongest and the smartest survived. The contrast in how they started out is just staggering. Alexander was the prince, plain and simple. From the age of 13, his mind was being sharpened by Aristotle, one of the greatest thinkers in history. Aristotle taught him philosophy, logic, and a love for the Homeric epics. Alexander basically saw Achilles as his role model and truly believed he was descended from gods. Now flip that coin. Over 1,000 years later, a boy named Temujin, the future Genghis Khan, was the pauper. His father was poisoned, his own tribe left his family to die, and he was even captured and enslaved. He didn't learn leadership from books, he learned it in the raw, brutal crucible of betrayal and constant warfare. According to the historian Plutarch, Alexander's own father, Philip II, saw this incredible fire in his son. He supposedly told him, "My boy, you must find a kingdom big enough for your ambitions. Macedon is too small for you." Think about that. From his earliest days, Alexander was told that his destiny was bigger than the world he knew.
And this brings up a massive question. What would have happened if you'd switched their places at birth? Seriously, would Alexander's ambition, which was so carefully nurtured inside a palace, have survived the brutal reality of the steppe? And what would Temujin have become with a mind like Aristotle's as his guide? It really makes you wonder, is greatness something you're born with, or is it something that's forged by your circumstances?
Okay, let's move on. Round 2, Imperial Blueprints. Because, see, a conqueror needs more than just a powerful army. They need a vision, an idea that makes the conquest feel like it's for something. And in this round, our two contenders came up with radically different plans for the world they wanted to build. On one side, you have Alexander's vision of homonoia, this idea of a grand fusion of peoples. He wanted to blend Greek and Persian civilizations into a new cosmopolitan world. On the other side, Genghis Khan's vision was all business, a unified, merit-based state held together by an unbreakable code of law, the Yasa. So you've got an empire of culture versus an empire of systems. Alexander's whole strategy was about exporting a culture. He founded dozens of cities, all named Alexandria, to be these shining beacons of Greek learning and art. He famously arranged for 10,000 of his Macedonian soldiers to marry Persian women, all at once, and he led by example. He even started wearing Persian clothes and adopting their court customs to show that he wasn't just some foreign conqueror, but the legitimate heir to their empire.
Genghis Khan, though, he built a machine. His focus was on function, not fusion. He demanded absolute loyalty, not to a tribe or a family, but to him alone. And to make sure that happened, he completely reorganized his society into a decimal system, shattering all the old tribal bonds. Getting a promotion was based purely on merit and loyalty, not who your father was. And in a move of pure pragmatic genius, he declared total religious tolerance. Why? Because it turned priests and holy men from potential enemies into neutral, tax-paying subjects. Smart.
And that brings us to round 3, the art of conquest. Now we're getting to the heart of their legends, the battlefield. Both of these men were undefeated military geniuses, but their methods were a masterclass in contrasting philosophies of war.
Alexander basically perfected the combined arms approach. His Macedonian phalanx was like an impenetrable wall of spears that would pin the enemy down. That created the opening for his elite companion cavalry to sweep in and deliver the final devastating hammer blow. It was methodical, disciplined, and just brutally effective. The Mongols, on the other hand, were masters of speed and terror. Their armies were made of mounted archers who could attack with unbelievable speed and then vanish before an enemy could even react. And they perfected psychological warfare. The choice was simple: surrender without a fight or face total annihilation.
The result of Alexander's tactics was just astonishing. In a little over a decade, starting in 334 BCE, he marched his army from Greece, through Egypt, across the entire Persian Empire, and all the way to the borders of India. It was one of the fastest and most audacious military campaigns in all of history.
But then you look at the Mongol storm. From the moment he unified the tribes in 1206 until his death in 1227, Genghis Khan's armies just swept across Asia. They conquered huge territories in northern China, Central Asia, and Persia. The scale and the speed of the Mongol advance was something the world had simply never seen before.
So how did Khan manage a conquest that vast? Well, the secret was logistics, specifically a system called the Yum. This was an incredibly sophisticated postal relay system, basically a network of stations stretching across the empire that allowed messages, orders, and intelligence to travel at incredible speeds. It was the nervous system of the Mongol war machine. It gave them a level of command and control that no European army could even dream of for centuries. And as a bonus, it made the Silk Road safer than ever, which supercharged trade and communication.
And now we've arrived at the championship round. Round 4, an immortal legacy. See, a conqueror's true work isn't judged by what they built, but by what was left standing after they were gone. And right here is where the fates of their two empires go in completely different directions.
The aftermath really tells a powerful story. The second Alexander died, his empire, which was built entirely on his own personality, shattered. It just completely fell apart as his generals, the Diadochi, tore it to pieces, fighting for control. But the Mongol Empire, because it was built on a system, it endured. Yeah, it eventually divided into 4 successor khanates, but the Mongol political identity and the rule of Genghis's descendants lasted for generations.
So, what was their ultimate impact? Well, Alexander's legacy was cultural. His empire collapsed, sure, but the Hellenistic culture he spread, that blend of Greek, Persian, and Egyptian ideas, it defined the ancient world for centuries and laid the intellectual foundation for Rome. Khan's legacy was one of connection. The Pax Mongolia, the Mongol peace, created this massive continental system of trade and communication. It stabilized the Silk Road and linked East and West in a way that truly reshaped the entire globe.
And let's not forget the mind-boggling scale of what the Mongols achieved. At its peak, under his successors, the empire stretched across an astonishing 15 million square miles. Let that sink in. It is still the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever seen. That's a geopolitical fact that just fundamentally redrew the map of Eurasia. Now, it's also important we acknowledge our own biases here. Western history, which inherits the Greek and Roman tradition, tends to paint Alexander as this brilliant, enlightened hero, and we kind of gloss over the incredible brutality of his conquests. Genghis Khan, on the other hand, is usually just remembered as a barbarian warlord. But the reality, as always, is far more complex, and modern scholarship is starting to really reevaluate these simple stories. So, after all that, we arrive at the final verdict. After 4 rounds, who takes the crown? Well, the truth is, this was never really a fight between 2 men. What this was a clash between 2 fundamentally different models of building an empire. Alexander was the visionary. His empire was a direct extension of his own personality. It was a project built on individual glory, on his charisma, and the power of a single cultural idea. Genghis Khan, he was the architect. His empire was a system, built on absolute discipline, collective loyalty, and a pragmatic legal structure that could function perfectly well with or without him. And in the end, you realize you don't actually have to choose a winner. In fact, a healthy, lasting civilization needs both. It needs Alexander's vision, the art, the philosophy, the culture that gives life meaning. But it also needs Khan's pragmatism, the systems, the laws, the infrastructure that provide order and just allow society to work. You could say Alexander left a world that thought differently, while Genghis Khan left a world that worked differently. And so we'll leave you with one final thought to chew on. Alexander died at 32, his legend frozen in time, unfinished. Genghis Khan died on campaign, still conquering. What if they had simply faded into old age? Would their legends be as powerful? Or is it the dramatic, untimely end that truly makes a conqueror immortal?